guys to stick with us through the whole day and be able to be here with us. This session, what we're going to be talking about is how to create student-centered learning environments. So when we think about our classrooms and thinking about student-centered learning environments, there's a lot in that word, right? And so today we're going to go through a variety of things, and I'm glad that you're all here with us. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I retired from Clark County School District from after 30 years there, actually 25 years there and 5 years in California. And I was the director for online and blended learning. And when you retire, people used to always say, you have to follow your passion. And this is my passion, point blank. I love online and blended learning. It is exactly where I want to be. So I have the great honor to help people across the nation. Just last month, I was in Virginia, I was in Arizona, and I was in Alaska. So it's been really great to be back home in Nevada and to be able to work with you guys. So I appreciate your time. So today, really quick, what we're going to really be focusing on is re-envisioning classroom instruction, is thinking about what does a balanced blended classroom look like, and how can we guide instruction in a student-centered way using playlists, and then basically really thinking about if it's student-centered, then it really needs to be able to be differentiated. And so we're really going to talk about how to do those types of things. So again, I appreciate all of you guys being here today. All right, so over in chat, I know that y'all gave me your favorite songs. Let's think about this. How much choice in learning do students have in your classroom? And you could just say none, a lot, little, few, a lot, whatever. I'll take anything over there. So how much choice in learning do students have in your classroom? Not much. Right now, not much. Yeah. When I was in classroom, they had plenty of it. Yeah, pre-K, not much. Good. Thank you guys for sharing, because I appreciate you being honest, right? I really, really appreciate you being honest, right? So if we were to give students choice and really center the learning around them, around their, not only their needs and not only our standards, but also about giving them choice and voice, I think that that would help us with some of that social emotional learning. I'll be honest with you. I'm a big proponent on choice and voice to help develop. And if you get a chance, go into my session earlier this morning, the recording will be available, talking about how students can take ownership and self-manage the learning. And I really think if we can create environments that allow for that voice and choice, then we can reduce some of that. So I'm a fan of curriculum instruction and assessment, or the CIA, and I'm going to talk a lot about the CIA of blended, and you're going to hear me talk about the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 balance. So trying to balance the curriculum instruction and assessment. Now, before we get much further, I tend to use Deb's wealth of knowledge. I know not everybody is familiar with it, so I just always throw this slide in here that says, look, when I say DOK level 1 and 2, when I talk about, low level depth of knowledge, that's recall skills and concepts, I'm really talking about that bottom part of Bloom's taxonomy, where we're doing basic recall of facts and ideas and concepts. And when I say we need to stretch the learning to DOK level 3 and 4, to that strategic and extended thinking, I'm really talking about the tip of that pyramid, right? Create, evaluate, analyze, maybe even a little bit of apply, right? So thinking through this as I go through and I say DOK, or you might see DOK 1 and 2 on a slide here, this is what we're talking about. That low level stuff is the low level of the pyramid. Those higher numbers are the higher numbers to the pyramid. So before we get there further, let's talk about blended personalized learning. Now, I use 3 elements, and I'm a big fan of not just blended learning, but I want blended personalized. I want the learning to be personalized because I want it to be student-centered, right? We want to take the wisdom of our teachers. You guys are super smart. Most of you probably already have a master's degree. You know your standards inside and out, right? You know your kids inside and out. You have so much wisdom. There's no way that the computer can ever replace you in the classroom. So don't ever think that this is about replacing teachers, because that technology, it's just a bunch of ones and zeros, right? It's adaptable, which is great, because of those ones and zeros, I can have a different learning path for each and every one of my kids. And that's matching your wisdom with the adaptability of technology so that we can create this personalized learning environment for each and every student. And it may look different for one student to the next. So those icons are really important. The tech, the teacher, and the student. I like to call them my 1/3s. So 1/3 of the time, we need to think about using the adaptability of technology to deliver instruction. We need to think about 1/3 of the time to release the learning, either playlists, choice boards, 5Es, project learning, small groups, right? Any of that, releasing it to our students 1/3 of the time. And 1/3 of the time, we're going to carry it, right? It could be direct instruction, it could be Socratic seminars, it could be small groups, it could be all different things. But if you look at this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, what it sounds really simple, but the hard thing for teachers to understand is if you look at the numbers, 2/3 of the time, you're off the stage. Now, what that means is you can teach by walking around, right? It just means that you're not on the stage. You're not up there directing the instruction. You're not in a small group working with 5 or 6 kids, but you're walking around. You get to build those relationships with your students, which are oh so important. So as we think through here, the blended learning, I call it the CIA of blended learning, not just curriculum, instruction, and assessment. I put these qualifiers in front of it. I really want us to start thinking about is where can I use digital curriculum? Where do I need to guide the instruction? And where can I not do just regular assessment, because tests can be inside the curriculum, tests can be inside the classroom, but where can I have assessment that's authentic, where the kids are really getting to those higher order thinking skills of that Bloom's taxonomy, where they're creating, they're analyzing, they're really getting into the academic vocabulary. That's when we talk about authentic assessment. So I'm a big fan of the triple Venn diagram. As you can see over there, I taught math for 10 years and I love just saying triple Venn diagram. But what we're really trying to do is shoot for the middle. Shoot for that very, very center. So today, this session is going to focus in on 1/3, and that's you. It's going to focus in on the teacher. I know it's called student-centered instruction, but it takes us, the teachers, to guide the instruction to create the student-centered learning environment. So this whole session really is focused in on you, on the teachers. When we think about introducing new content in your classroom, there's really only 3 ways to absorb it. Right? I can do it all by myself. I can be the teacher. I can stand up there. I can deliver all the DOK level 1 and 2. Or I can ask my kids to read something out of a textbook, or I can release the learning to technology. So there's lots of different ways of thinking about, okay, if I've got a new unit or a new lesson that I want to do, how do I want new content delivered to my students? And I really want you guys to start thinking about when you're guiding instruction, when can I release to the technology? When do I have to carry it? When can a textbook even be a resource, right? It's a shift in practice is really what it is. We're going to move from our teacher-centered classroom where we set the calendar, where we, do all the direct instruction, doing all the delivery, right? We're doing all the lesson plans, doing all the creating of assignments, doing all the assessment of the students. And we're going to flip that on its head. We're going to change it, and it'll be a slow transition. Believe me, it's not an overnight transition. It might be a very slow transition. And I'm going to give you one tool today that's going to help you make that transition. You're still going to, in this one, with playlist, you're still going to plan the lesson. You're still going to determine how content is delivered, but you're not going to have to deliver it. You're still going to assign activities for the kids to do, but you may not be the person grading it. It could be Canvas that's grading it, right? And you're still going to think about how to assess my students, right? So you're still doing some of those things, but you're not the main focus. In a student-centered classroom, we're going to give students choices of activities. We're going to release to our digital partners so that they can personalize the learning experience, so that Tommy can be on a video while Susie's over there working on a Google document, and Pierre in Sang is working on a joint Jamboard, right? So that they're taking responsibility and they're also self-assessing and assessing their peers. So that's the shift in practice that we're really looking for here, right? And then, like I said, it's a slow one. You're not going to happen overnight. It's a very slow transition. That release to the students is the best thing, because what it does is it creates an environment where they're engaged. And it creates an environment where they're having to build social emotional learning skills. If you think of the 5 CASEL skills, Self-management and responsible decision-making are a huge part of SEL skills, as is social awareness when we put them in small groups. So when you build learning environments that release to your students, it allows you to be the guide on the side. I like to say teaching by walking around, right? You've created the path via your lesson plan or your choice board or your playlist or your small groups. You created the environment, but you now have the ability to work one-on-one. You now have the ability to create relationships, because I truly believe that the core business of schools is relationships and learning. And I say that in order of priority. I think relationships come first. Kids will learn from you because they have a solid and a good relationship with you. If they don't feel they have a solid or a good relationship with you, some kids will just shut down and they're going to fail just because they want to fail despite you. So when we can release to our students, they now own their own learning. They're now working on their SEL skills, and call it out. Use the terms. I really want you guys to be socially aware about what we're talking about today. I want you to use your leadership skills. Use those vocabulary words to really help the students understand when you release the learning to them. So we're going to watch a video. I love this video. It's done by Volkswagen, believe it or not. So let me set this up to share. So when we watch this video, I want you guys to start thinking about how in this video is this much like releasing the learning, or in this case, releasing the walking. In the chat, if you can give me a thumbs up if you can't hear this or something, please let me know. I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's only 1.5 minutes. What do you guys think? Isn't that awesome? I love that. I absolutely love that, because what it reminds us is it reminds us that we are in a situation where we're pushing everybody up the elevator, right? And this video, like I said, I don't know if I said this earlier in the beginning, at the end of this session, I'll give you the whole slide deck so that you'll have access to it, but you can use this in your classroom as well. I love the idea that it has there. So let's do a breakout room that will allow you guys to talk. So Tina, can you help me out here? Can you throw them, let's say, into 8 breakout rooms where you can talk about how the video demonstrated choice and self-pace and empowerment, really, right? Choice and self-pace and empowerment. So on your screen, you should be getting an invite to one of the breakout rooms to talk about the video and how it demonstrated choice and self-pace and empowerment. Became basically student-centered, or in this case, participant-centered. We have about 10 people still in this room. I'm just hoping that you guys saw the invite to the room. If you didn't, please let us know. We can always make sure that you get there.
I'm gonna try and send them to another room, see if it works.
All right. Yeah, because that'll throw up another block. What do you think of the video?
Oh, I love it. I've seen it before.
Yeah, I do.
I'm like, we should do that in every school just to get kids moving. Well, all of the rooms have at least 4 people in them. That's good.
Oh, that's good.
Except room 6. Room 6 only has 3 people, but
that still works. Yeah, this is the only breakout. We only have one breakout in this one.
And Kim Perry is out. Actually, it looks like she's logged in twice, so she's assigned in one. Probably, maybe she's doing video and phone. Maybe.
Yeah, I know that once there was somebody who just kept coming up as iPhone, and he was talking to me, and I'm like, no name, so I had no recollection, but he acted like he knew me. So we're out of here at 1:40.
Yep.
Okay. Did we have any other people not show up to a session today? I know you said there was one in session 2, that room 2 got
Last
canceled.
time I checked, they were missing the Discovery Ed people. I don't know if they showed up or not.
Oh, that's a bummer. I really appreciate you hanging with me and taking care of me on the breakout rooms and throwing the links up in the chat.
Hey, no problem. If I was better at typing, I'm a little slow at typing.
All right, let's give them 1 minute.
Okay.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Hope you guys had a good discussion. That's probably one of my favorite videos. I really like it because it demonstrates so many different things in so many different ways. If you have something you'd like to share, you are welcome to open up your mic and throw something out that possibly came up in your breakout room.
Me and Lisa were talking about how what we learned from the video is how by making things more fun, if we make our lessons in our classroom more fun for our students, it will help them become more engaged in their learning.
Good point. Love it. Again, welcome back. I know some of you are still just heading back. We were saying if you had something you wanted to share, you're more than welcome to open up your mic and share something that you might have talked about in your breakout room.
I just made the change from elementary to middle school, but one of my breakout team members reminded me that it's okay to be goofy, and sometimes, it's a good thing.
Yep. And guess what? Yeah, stickers still work, and candy is a great motivator at the secondary level, believe me. I spent 10 years in the high school mathematics classroom, and boy, if I said, hey, right answer gets this candy, and it was fun, we just throw it out, that would be fun. I love it. I like that all ages. That's a good one. Yeah, all ages did participate in the video. Really, when you think about it, that was really cool. And that's what's going to happen when you change your classroom to a student-centered classroom. I'm gonna tell you right now, kids that weren't engaged before will now become engaged. Kids that were engaged before are going to buck the system for a little bit. Just know that they are going to try to buck the system because you changed the rules of the game. They had already figured out how school worked, right? They figured out how to play the game, how to get the A, and what they needed to do, right? So they're going to try to buck the system. But you might find those kids that were heads down, not really wanting to participate. They're the ones who are going to be the most anxious because guess what? You changed the game that helped them. Right. And so think about student-centered classroom is an equity involved classroom. It's a classroom that creates an equity. It puts everybody on the right same level. So when we think about what does that look like when we release the learning to our students, they're going to take ownership. And yes, we're going to probably have to put in, social contracts, and we're really going to have to talk about, what characteristics that go involved in this, right? So we might have to do a little bit of character ed. What does trust look like? What does responsibility look like? Do a little bit of that as well. But I will tell you, when you do that releasing, they will start taking ownership and just call it out. You had great leadership today. You had great social skills today. I really liked how when you give them those positive rewards, they'll come back and they'll want to learn for you. So we're going to just talk about one technique today on a student-centered classroom, and it's going to be playlist. So let's just do a background check. You can use the annotation on the screen, or you can just throw it up in chat. 1, I have created and used playlists in my classrooms before. 2, I know what a playlist is, but I've never created any. Or 3, I have no idea what you're talking about, Kim. What is a playlist? So again, 1, 2, and 3, this is just me doing a check for background. Got some 2s and 3s going up on the top there. Oh, lots of 2s and 3s. Good, good. All right, so I'm glad you're here today. I'm absolutely glad you're here today because playlist is a great way to restructure your lesson so that 1, you release the learning to your students, and 2, it requires them to take control of their own learning and create some of those SEL skills like good decision making, like leadership, like social background. So let's talk about what a playlist is. So when we think about a playlist, what we're really doing is we're moving from the teacher-centered classroom to that student-centered, right? And that student-centered, I want to just talk about that middle row that says role of the instructor. That role of the instructor, you're going to take yourself off the stage. You're not going to be the leader or the authority in the classroom. You might be the lead learner, because you guys are going to learn together. You're going to facilitate. You're going to be learning partners, right, with your students. That's where the teaching by walking around becomes really important. Because when we were lecturing, if you go one roll up above there and there's student participation under teacher-centered, it was very passive. The kids were receivers of information. What we want now is we want a very active, much like the staircase. We want them actively engaged and taking ownership of their own learning. They could choose to use the escalator if they want to, or they could have choose to use the stairs. And you saw 60% of the people chose the stairs because they put a little bit of fun in it, right? And when we go down to assessment, notice what happens. We were so worried in our teacher-centered about correct answers and mostly that summative test score at the end for grades. When we go to a student-centered, it's really more about learning from our failures and learning about the errors that we make and that continuous student self-assessment and student reflecting on their learning, not them waiting for us to give them grades, but for them reflecting on it. So we create a culture that went from very competitive. That's why I told you, your top students are going to be mad because you changed the game. They were very competitive and they were the one individual that was in the top of the score or in the top 10%. Well, we're going to change it. We're going to change that environment so it's more student-centered, so it's more collaborative, so it's more supportive, right? Those types of things. And so we are, yes, changing the rules on them. And so some of our students will buck it. So here's our typical classroom. In your typical classroom, right? Everybody reads the same story at the same time. They listen to the same lecture. They test on the same day. It was I do, we do, you do, assess. right? That's the typical learning situation. It's very passive. Everybody's moving at the same time, just like that escalator, right? So what if we change that, right? If this typical model, is it meeting the needs of our students? Well, maybe some, but not all. Because, right, the kids that were struggling, they're like, I don't know what she's doing and I can't catch up. And the kids that were bored, they finish early and they don't know what to do either. They're like, pfft. And then both of those two kids become behavior problems. But when we change it, right, we take those exact same elements, those guided questions, those class discussions, the videos, the skills and practice, even the formative assessments, and we say, look, these are the components of a good lesson. What if we took those same components and we created a plan in a self-paced unit of study, or what I'd like to call is a playlist? Or some of you, if I said hyperdocs, you might know that word a little bit different, right? So what we're doing is we're creating an opportunity for the students to manage their own learning. It's the same elements that we've used in the past. So what this really does, again, like I said, it could be called a hyperdoc, is it creates a learning roadmap. And the key about this learning roadmap is it fosters independence. It allows for choice. We can be differentiated on needs. And the cool thing is it's based on their own pace. So if I create a playlist, I can have a may do after you finish the list. So the kids that were bored before, they may do something after this list. We've given them a choice, right? Because it's individualized. So it takes that responsibility from learning and it places it in the hands of the students. And it frees you, the teacher, up to assist by teaching by walking around and assist those struggling learners, or to conference with students individually. So what does it look like? This image comes from Catlin Tuckler's blog, and this is one of the playlists, and she's more of a secondary teacher. She was a former ELA teacher out of Central Valley, not Central Valley, East Coast of California, right? So what we do is we start with introducing our purpose, and we have different ways of students gaining knowledge, right? So we can be using videos that either I curated from YouTube, or I could have made them myself. I could be using the textbook. Remember the 3 different ways that the kids can get content. They can get it from me, they can get it from a textbook, or they can get it from technology. So thinking through the different ways. Notice how this one set up a lot of icons and it mixes online and offline. Don't think that this is all about digital learning, because we do want some mixed offline stuff. There might be some time where we need them to do small groups. And there might even be a time where they actually do a check-in with us in a small group. You can embed online review quizzes or games. You can even flip your instruction and tell the kids, okay, I want you to watch this video tonight. It's 2 minutes and we're going to start a discussion tomorrow. And the kids that are ready to start the discussion, they get to go to small groups. The kids that weren't, they're going to start with watching the video. And yes, it's going to be differentiated because it's student centered. If I'd thrown them in a small group, they wouldn't have had the benefit of watching that 2 or 3 minute video, right? Yes, as soon as they have to do that a couple times, they're going to be like, dude, I'm watching the video, even if it's watching the video during the passing to your class. So it's a kind of a way of taking the exact same things that you did in your lesson and providing it in a path or a roadmap for your students. So what happens here is the responsibility shifts. You're still designing lessons. You're still guiding the instruction. You're still selecting the activities and the resources. But what you're doing is you're giving all of that information to your students from the start, right? So you've created the roadmap. It says, look, this is what you're going to do for this lesson. And that lesson can be for 1 day. It could be for a full week. It could be whatever the case may be. I always start with 1 day until we feel better with it, right? And then the students work through those assignments at their own pace. Now, I have seen playlists that say it's not your own pace. You have to start this way, just like you saw on the Catlin Tucker one, is you have to start and go down linear. So it doesn't have to be, you know, you can jump all over. That's not your own pace. Your own pace means that you might need to watch a video 3 times and the person next to you watched it once. That's what own pace means, because you still need to set those minimum due dates. It's due at the end of the period, or it's due at the end of the week. And you want to add in check-ins, especially for those lower learners that still have yet to figure out what responsibility looks like and setting time management. So what does that do for you as the teacher? Well, teaching by walking around, right? It increases your time with individual students, with the students who need you. You can check for understanding. You can target their learning goals. You can note where there's strengths and there's confusions. You can stop the whole class. I love this. I was in one person's classroom. They just stopped the whole class and said, hey, time out. Right? Eyes on me. and they just redirected the learning and then released them right back to their, because they saw something where there was some confusion going on. And right, and that's a good point to just go ahead and stop. You're still connecting with your students. You're still guiding that instruction. So what does it look like to make a playlist, right? So hyperdocs.co is a great place to go and look at some hyperdocs or playlists that are already created. They've already got some lessons that are already there created. They also even have templates that you can borrow from. So again, when you're thinking about playlists, and you saw the one from Catlin Tucker, and I'm going to show you one here in just a moment, you're thinking about taking your lesson and giving that lesson to the student, but written in student-friendly words, with assignments, with check-ins, with assessments, with, you know, all kinds of things, but you're giving it to the students to work through. So when we create a playlist, what we want to do is we want to start with a specific standard or maybe a single topic, break it down into a series of tasks, right? Instead of I do, you do, we do, think about how can that look? What can that look like for you? And determine if it, I always start with linear, because linear is a great place to start, because then you can do the linear. If you want to go to a choice board, and that's a whole different way, then a choice board is another way where students can pick and choose. But we'll talk about that at another date and time. I have some webinars coming up. I hope you guys join me. Yes, I do have some ideas and lessons for kindergartners. So what you want to do is you want to ensure that there's learning opportunities through different media. We've already talked about it. A teacher, a content, or technology can deliver DOK level 1 and 2. That's all it's going to be able to deliver. But if we let it deliver DOK level 1 and 2, then we can push our kids to 3 and 4 via direct instruction, or via the assignments that we give, or via creating a performance task, right? So think about the different ways you can do it. And I like to use symbols, especially with my littles, right? You want to use symbols, even your bigs. When is this going to be a video? When's this a text? Use those symbols, like using a mic if you ask them to do a recording, or if you're going to use iReady or Alex Math, use their logo in your playlist, and make sure you include online and offline, just like you would in your lesson plans. It's just you're giving the lesson plan in kid-friendly language to your students. So think of it as backwards design, right? Identify the desired results. What are the big skills and ideas? Go out and find out where you can get DOK level 1 and 2 from DOK partners, from curriculum partners. Then determine what is acceptable evidence or some type of practice. Like, you know, I always say, learn about something, grow it, you know, practice it, and then show that you've practiced it. So think about what are the learning events that you want the kids to have. So when you're sitting out and you're doing a playlist, and I will tell you, you might want to start by looking at a bunch of other ones. That's why the hyperdocs.co is there for you. So here's some suggested tasks. It could be a playlist of 3 things. I do a lot of professional development, and I usually put only 3 things in my playlist for others to do. It might be watching a video. It might be looking at an article. There's some type of quiz maybe embedded with Kahoots, you know, but you could put in games, you know, that can be like an extended after. You could put in peer evaluations. You could even put conferencing in it. You can have them create products like videos and infographics and websites. And you want to make sure that you have maybe some small group or peer to peer thinking through some of those things that go through that, right? So think about the types of tasks you want. And again, guys, you're going to have access to this PowerPoint. You don't have to take all these notes. So here's another playlist. So notice what you see here. Great use of icons. Great use of consistent language: engage, explore, explain, apply, share, reflect. And this truly is a template that you can find on hyperdocs.co. And doesn't mean that you have to do all 6 or 8 of those boxes. You can just do 3. And the reflect or the extend could be something that you do in your classroom. So to start with, make a copy of a template, go to hyperdocs.co. There's a bunch of templates over there, or make a copy of somebody else's and try it. Maybe it covers one of the standards that you've already done. Or if you're one of those people who's already done, you know, a little bit about playlists and you want to create your own, start from scratch. Start from scratch. So there's a variety of ways of doing it. You can use Google Docs or slides. Notice the small one down there. Somebody asked about Kinder. Look at that, silent E. That's definitely for littles, right? A lot of slide decks that are done that way. And I'll show you guys where you can get a bunch of samples. Of course, there's samples on hyperdocs.co. You can create it in your Google Classroom. It can just be the list right there. Boom, boom, boom. Lesson 2 goes on for 8 different things. There's 8 different things that those kids have to do. If I have a learning management system like Canvas or Schoology, I could do a Google Doc like you see over there on the far side, and I can put a link right there inside of my Google Classroom. So there's a variety of ways to make it a playlist. So here's the thing. The best thing about playlists is that you can differentiate with your students. I know we have kids that aren't at grade level and we have kids that are well above our grade levels. And right. So how do I differentiate that? Well, you can do that. And that's the great thing about a playlist. So when you think about a playlist and you think about differentiation, there's 4 different ways you can differentiate through content, assessments, assignments, or path, right? So when we chunk the learning, that's what a playlist is it really is chunking the learning. Right? There's a variety of ways that we could do it, right? And you see over here, ed puzzles one way, small groups, one-on-one conferencing. There's lots of different things that you can put in your playlist. So when we think about differentiating it, how can we differentiate it? Well, what I say is start with one playlist. Okay, create a playlist that you know that the average student would do. And this is kind of what we did in the past. We created a lesson that we thought everybody would get through. But guess what? Since it's a playlist and not everybody's seeing what's on the other person's shoulder, I can make copies of that playlist and I can change the assignments in it. I can consider a different reading for a different lexile level. I can reduce the number of choices for some kids, right? I can add in supports for other kids. And I can think about how I can extend those learnings for those high reaching kids. They don't know, they just know, go to your classroom and get the playlist, right? And because you're teaching by walking around, what I love is even if you didn't make a whole bunch of changes, you could walk up to a kid and say, you know what? You just need to do the red, the blue, and the yellow. I know there are 5 things here, but these are the 3 things I need you to focus on because that kid has a different need than the kid sitting next to them. So think about when you differentiate, and I love the NEPF coming up right here, when you're differentiating that, it could be using instead of, digital content, it could be you recording, using different softwares and games for different students, right? Using a Flipgrid or an ed puzzle. I love using ed puzzles so that you can collect some data on there. Nearpod or Paradeck's a great way for students to self-pace themselves. And then putting in some assessment forms with Google Forms, then you can then look at the data and you can say, oh, you know what? I need to pull this kid aside and do a one-on-one conferencing because you've released the learning to your students. You now have teaching by walking around. And you now have the time to be able to do that individual one-on-one time with students. So here's an interest tag. Go ahead and use your annotation. So I will be doing webinars. I have 12 different webinars, and one of them actually is very similar to this. It's called Playlists. How many of you would be interested in taking everything that we learned today, applying it in your classroom, and getting professional learning credit for that? Right? So we're going to be doing some webinars that are going to be probably an hour webinar, very similar to this session you see here. And what we're going to be doing is in the webinar, everybody's invited to it. Anybody can come, just like this session here, anybody can come. But if you had the opportunity to take and now put playlists and play in your classroom and try it out and reflect on it and see how it's going and get 5 additional CUs, might you do that? Would that be something you'd be interested in? And that's what we have here, is we have this opportunity to actually do that. We just passed by the school board this week. I'm going to go ahead and put this over here in the chat. You can get the slide deck right there. I'm going to clear this all up. So the slide deck, I went ahead and I dropped it in there. So to keep learning and growing. Today's a great day. You guys probably learned lots and lots of stuff. But what we want to do is we want to go beyond just listening. We want to put things into action. And so that's what we did is we developed 12 different digital learning webinars, right? So these webinars are going to be hosted on Tuesdays every 3 weeks through the remainder of the school year. Now you can come to the webinars and enjoy all these topics. You can notice that there are 2 different series. There's a blended learning series as well as the learner centered, which is basically this one, the student centered learning one. And notice, look at that, January 11th is using self-paced playlists. I love it. So you can actually take everything that we learned today, put it into your classroom, attend the webinar, get 1 hour credit for the webinar, get another 5 hours by doing the implementation or what we call the workshop that goes with it. And it's really about learning, growing it in your classroom and showing or demonstrating and reflecting on that. Now they are not in the calendar just yet, but they will be. This literally passed the school board 2 days ago. So give us some time to get them into the calendar, but we will get them into the calendar on Nevada Learning NevadaDigitalLearning.org. I'm going to go ahead and put that one in there. They're not there now, but you'll want to bookmark this place because it is your State Department of Education that is going to be hosting these. right? So they'll be State Department of Education credits, right? They're not there on the calendar today, but they will be. They are coming. So the webinars are 1 hour. If you want to go into the workshop where you're taking it and you're putting it into your classroom and applying it, that's the ability to get an additional 5 hours. I absolutely love it. Also, please know, a year ago, I was working with the State Department and I actually did a video learning series. It's called Blended Learning Videos, numbers 1 through 5. And this one is kind of like Instruct. It's because remember, it's about the teacher. Today, we all talked about the teacher. So it's the Instruct video. It's kind of more like that. And so you can get more information if you want on that. I will tell you, it has been an absolute pleasure to be with you guys today. And look at this. We are so way early. So if there's any questions, Tina went ahead and threw the survey up front. Any questions about the webinars, about the content? Mics are open, guys. Attendance. Paul, explain what that means. The attendance for this session. You need the survey link for that one.
Are the webinars free, Kim?
Yeah, the webinars are free. Isn't that cool? Yeah, the webinars are free. So you are welcome. And I'm doing this for the State Department of Education. Thanks, guys. It has been my pleasure. I'm hoping to see all of you in the webinars, at least the playlist one, right? Because you're going to be trying this now. Why not? Let's get some credit for it. Yes, there is a raffle at the last session, so please stick with us. I know I finished early. I apologize. We could have spent more time.